Okay, test audio. Test audio.
that's the only place you can shoot in this range. You can't even be out west shooting beer bottles off the, or you have for self-defense.
Well, the hour being 3 o'clock, this 21st day of March 2021, I'll call this meeting to order, the agenda and priority meeting of council. We have an agenda before us. Is there anyone who'd like to add or delete anything?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, 5.2 in camera land negotiation as
Okay.
per the MGA 197 section 2 and Freedom of Information Privacy Act section 24 1G.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? That's it? Would someone like to make a motion? We accept this agenda as amended.
Your worship, I would make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. All in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Okay, the first thing on the agenda are updates from admin regarding, first of all, the provincial policing review.
Sure, Your Worship, I can kind of paraphrase a little bit and see if council has any further dialogue you wish to entertain. Last meeting, there was a significant amount of correspondence in your agenda package regarding the government's feasibility study in consideration of a provincial police force. Also, our agency that we work with, the AUMA, the Alberta Urban Municipality Association, is also knee deep in watching what's happening with the study through the government. So just within the package, just some information that touches on a little bit of that information, but there's more out there. There have been a couple webinars associated with policing. Just to go over a few things with you. So the town has a municipal police service agreement. We signed, it's a 20-year agreement. It's probably 10 years ago, roughly. So the municipalities went through the same process in Alberta at that given time, a 20-year agreement. So the province also has an agreement with the feds. It's the provincial police service agreement, where Public Safety Canada covers 30% of the billable expenditures, and the province covers the 70%, in which more or less is downloaded onto municipalities. The federal contribution is increased, will be increased to 119 million from the current 112 million point four. So federal dollars come into the province right now at just over $112 million, which comes into play here in a few minutes. So I just want to go back to that 70% that the provincial government covers. So not all of that is downloaded on municipalities. There's a few things that the province covers outside of the municipal contributions. The province covers also recruiting, litigation, discipline, transfer costs, operational call centers, air services, incident response teams, forensics, police, dog services, IT, serious crimes, and homicides. So that's not a direct billing to municipalities. Also, it must be noted that Alberta pays $262.4 million annually for RCMP service, and the feds paying 112.4, which I stated earlier. So as I stated, the province, through the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General, is conducting a feasibility study through a consulting firm called PricewaterhouseCoopers. And what they're doing is looking into the creation of a police force. And it has grabbed the attention of AUMA and RMA, which is the Rural Municipalities Association, as well as actually many, if not all, municipalities in Alberta, what is going on with the government regarding the study. The concern that I've heard from RMA, the Rural Municipality Association, is a concern of potential increased costs, concern with decreased level of service, and the level of municipal and community input on priorities and actually services and service quality. The RMA within this package states that they also have a concern of the loss of the 112 million point four. Where will that money come from if there is an Alberta police force? So again, that money comes directly from the feds. So right now, through an evaluation of salaries for RCMP is significantly lower than competing police forces. However, we do know we have on our books an outstanding union negotiation back pay, probably 2018-ish, somewhere in there. So there's 2 to 3 years of back pay potentially coming to us and all other Alberta municipalities associated with that negotiation. So yeah, RMA would be concerned with higher salaries. Currently, provincial police force ranks low within a survey conducted by the National Police Federation. So within a survey, I think it's 11th for consideration of a Alberta police force ranked on that study. RMA at this point feel that many of their questions have not been answered. So there's some insecurity, I'd say, from that organization on what is happening. So a lot of questions have not been answered at this given time. In May 2020, the Alberta Fair Deal panel released a report comprised of 25 recommendations, and I can reference at least one. Recommendation number 14, which is outlined in this report, so attachments. Comments of frustration with RCMP bureaucracy, police transfers and community familiarity and service continuity, so that having members stationed more locally or regionally could be a benefit. Concerns with the lack of members to serve smaller municipalities, so to draw into more rural areas. Maybe that's not a draw for employment, perhaps, according to this review. However, this report that I referenced also outlines some benefits. This is, again, the Fair Deal Panel report, that there be potentially have local control over law enforcement, regional policing districts, and the pooling of resources, quick turnaround on approvals for special initiatives, again, limiting some of that bureaucracy, stability of members that are ingrained into the community. So besides the government through the PricewaterhouseCoopers conducting the Alberta Police Force feasibility study, the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General has also established the Alberta Police Interim Advisory Board. So this one started in advance of the government moving into this feasibility study. The work of this board includes the sharing of the municipal perspective on policing priorities with the RCMP and government, and to develop the governance structure for the permanent board. The interim board is made up of reps from RMA, reps from the AUMA board, and a member from the Alberta Association of Police Governance, and we're a member of that association. Within that board work, some of the detailed priorities that they're working on, which will have advanced on as a recommendation to the minister, is to develop strategy to ensure that all vacant frontline detachment positions are filled. So I'm talking RCMP only. Ensure resourcing decisions reflect community needs. Increase efforts to target repeat offenders committing crimes in rural and small urban municipalities. Work with municipalities to identify local priorities and support detachments in conducting proactive policing and community engagements. Financing to a permanent Alberta Police Advisory Board, and to also address racism and discrimination in policing. So two things I see going on. One is the government looking at the feasibility of the Alberta Police Force. Meanwhile, the minister's also put in place this interim board to provide feedback on the RCMP. So I just want to kind of highlight that. I think it's very important council be ingrained with this topic, and it empowers you to then create a voice to government if some of their decisions does not line up with council's expectations. So I'll stop there to see if there's any other dialogue or questions.
Todd, what is the main drive to go to a provincial police force? What do you see as the main reason?
Some of my chats, I guess, Mr. Mayor, is that's a question to ask of our MLA and a provincial government. What is the purpose? Is it financial? Then there's a question about that funding piece I talked to you about. Is it bureaucracy. I guess that's some of the questions to your answers to your questions. That's what I stated, to eliminate perhaps the bureaucracy that may exist with the different components of RCMP. So
It's just that it seems to me, I'm getting the impression we think we can do it cheaper. And this report doesn't say that, does it? The way I read it, it's not cheaper, it wouldn't be cheaper, but that to me is the biggest driver, and the other things surely could be resolved that we're saying, of the lack or the red tape and bureaucracy and stuff dealing with the RCMP. Surely that could be overcome, but I don't see the reason to do it if it's gonna cost more. Don't make a lot of sense, but I guess everybody's looking at the personal, more control touch of it, I guess.
Your worship, and I just wonder if you could really put your finger on the service levels, which it's hard to do. But if you're gonna pay, what are you paying for $1.56 million?
Yeah.
And what are you gonna pay for $2 million? Is that level of service increase worth that level of investment? That's what you would need to know, I'd say, to help you make those decisions.
And your worship, last week, I think the latest email that Vanessa sent out from AUMA last week, I believe both those recordings were in that one. So if people are interested in hearing that, they're long. I haven't listened to the first one, but certainly the second one was about 3 hours, and I think there's a lot of good information in there, and I think there's concern about, attracting police officers, maybe not to an Innisfail, but to smaller communities, and will those service levels rise ultimately? And I think they're a long ways from kind of gathering all the data, but what I saw was, a lot of, I think people would like to see a lot more consultation over this topic.
Any other discussion?
Your worship,
Yes, Councillor Bates.
yeah, just comments. I think our relationship with our RCMP has been probably better than some communities, just because of the interaction that we do have. I'm not really sure. I think we were also, there's not that many communities that have this similar committee that we have, right? And so I do believe that our relationship and our interaction probably creates just generally a more positive connection than probably a lot of communities experience, just because they don't have that opportunity. So those are just my thoughts. I certainly don't personally feel a strong drive to pursue a different police force, and would think that during tough economic times, to make that transition would be huge.
Yeah.
Your worship, I know on the webinar last week, there was a comment about perhaps it's the judicial system more than the actual
It
service
is.
delivery.
I think it is too, yeah. Yeah, we blame the RCMP on the revolving door with some of these catch and release things, but it's not necessarily them that's dictating that. Councillor Hill?
Yes, Your Worship. So obviously we've discussed a little bit about potential, informing ourselves from our MLA. Has that been a request that we've put out so we can get a little more information from him, or just be constructive? Is that something that we would ask for?
Yeah. Certainly, yeah, we could, but.
I know that I'm sure there's more than one topic that we would like to get some more further our knowledge on,
Yeah.
but keep on looking at my calendar to see when that date might come.
Other than the price of barley. Councillor Reaper.
Just a couple of comments. One was that Michael Daw had an interesting article in the Red Deer Advocate a few weeks or months ago about the Alberta Provincial Police Force that we had previously and why it went away. So I didn't see any of that in the background here. And the other one is, they did reference the Surrey example but I see that they get a very small intake of RCMP that are wanting to go to a Surrey municipal force. And I think there's about 800 RCMP officers that are going to be extra in VC when that transition goes over, because they're not getting like a very small 5 or 10% uptake from RCMP members. So I'm just wondering if they're, monitoring that situation closely and seeing how that's going, because I don't think it's going that well.
Yeah, actually, Your Worship, through to Councillor Rehberger, that was one thing that was brought up in the webinar, was the difficulty that they will probably incur in recruiting, because there's this prestige to the RCMP that, kids are young and you want to be an RCMP when I grow up, and maybe there's not that same when it comes to the a provincial police force. So I think, to me, recruiting was a big part of that second webinar I watched, and how difficult that may be going forward. So.
Your Worship, through to CAO Becker, are we well connected with the advisory group? Because it seems like things are happening at light speed here. And up until now, it's been sort of sketchy on how much information they've been sharing. So are we well connected to be able to monitor this and give input at applicable milestones?
Your Worship, Councillor Harrison, I don't recall the engagements plan from the province. AUMA, the board is the elected officials, so you have access to those individuals. And AUMA itself, they have policy analysts that you can certainly connect in with. So if you have certain information you're seeking, I could certainly help connect, or those individuals, if you like. If there's specific questions, we can certainly pass those on.
Thank you.
Are you still on that advisory board?
I am. So Mayor Romaine's referring to the AUMA Safe and Healthy Communities Committee, and actually policing as part of that. And the chair of that committee, Councillor Tanya Thorne from Okotoks, she's also the chair of this interim board. So yeah, I do have a little bit of connection there, but those people on that board are available for a conversation.
So has it been a topic of conversation amongst them?
It is, Your Worship. It's one of their primary priorities. So and back to Councillor Harrison. So anything that's you see here is really a result of some of that engagement. So I don't think council's missing. It's on their website. There's a lot of detail. Again, there's a lot of information in those 2 webinars as well that I think you'd be really, if you haven't, you could get caught up really easily by listening to those webinars.
So I guess the question is, do we want to pursue this further as far as gathering information, or are we looking for some more? Councillor Harrison, you thought it was, just sort of not enough information to make decisions on.
Not so much that, Your Worship. It was just, are we connected and how well are we connected, so that when we do have these kind of questions and that engagement, we've got a pipeline there to get our concerns out. So it was more around just the engagement and how well we're engaged. So I think there's lots of information here. Yeah. It's just that we need to digest it.
I think we have to rely on our representation at AUMA. Certainly we're at their mercy of, and down, information down from what their vision is. They certainly have have the direct pipeline to what's going on, but we have to, I guess we can make our presence known with AUMA that, you know, if we want to follow it closer, but I think they're doing a pretty good job myself. It's a pretty extensive report here with RMA and AUMA. But I guess at this point in time, if, you know, we have a little more time to go through this report and kind of get a clearer picture in our head on what they're talking about, but to me, this report almost shows that it's not achievable, but I haven't gone into it in a lot of detail anyways, but there's a lot of things with policing that we don't see too, like the availability of technical teams and investigative officers and that type of thing. So a lot of it you don't see too, that we don't always pay for either. Excuse me. But I think we have this for information for now, and we try and digest the information from it and come back with questions. We can forfeit those to the MLAs or AUMA or whoever we decide want those answers. Does that make sense?
Yes, I believe that. Your worship, I believe that makes sense. I don't see that we're being asked to imminently decide anything, and I'm sure AUMA will consult us further. I did force myself to read most of this. And, so I'll make the motion that we receive this for information at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? No? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Strategic plan policy.
So your worship, Councillor Reberger, Councillor Bates might be able to recognize this document. I presented it in draft in the fall of 2017, and it followed actually, administration did a staff survey, and one of the things that the staff indicated that we don't really have a vision of a really, maybe a communication, just that flow of information on where are we going, or what are we trying to achieve. So they acknowledge that, but it also kind of led into maybe the community has the same thoughts, and you hear that once in a while about what are we doing and so forth. But we kind of, I remember, I think it's Councillor Reberger, not to point at you, Councillor Reberger, but I remember, I think we said, let's go through the strategic process before we adopt the policy. I thought we adopted it, but we actually never did. I didn't bring it back, but so we went through a strategic process. It's actually worked out really well. We have got off the rail a bit on strategic plan, on the original plan, just on reporting back to you and showing some of the adjustments made. But staff right now are working on compiling, getting back that on the rail over the next few months to bring it to you and show you the work you've done as council and the success you've had to achieve your initial strategic focus, and then any adjustments over the length of your term. It's pretty significant what you've accomplished in your term, supported by really dedicated staff in this room and then also on the field as well. So, but however, so it's important to have some sort of structure and framework with strat planning. It actually guides staff in supporting you. It also tells the community that, hey, we do have a focus, we follow a plan, we only have so much resources, so we need to follow the plan and change that plan when with certain circumstance occurs. So really, what I see in this draft policy is what we've been doing on the most part up to COVID time, and then we've kind of regrouped within a COVID plan as well. So again, I won't review it in detail, but the policy, as it states, outlines a framework. It outlines a planning cycle on both short-term and long-term envisioning and strat planning. It also identifies a calendar of when staff can start rolling out some of the work to help you. So the way outside the policy, it looks like, as we did last time, January of new term, so January of 2022, new council would go through a strategic planning process through an external facilitator to help new council pull out agenda items that the council sees fit. So that puts into play staff to build out their tactical plans. We bring that back to you. Is this what you're hoping to achieve after the year? We also have an engagement process within there with the community, likely in maybe in the fall, that you start going out to the community, direction onto us, and start posing those questions on strat plan and focus and get community input on it. Leads into budget process in your November, October through December really, and then that leads into budget. So that's kind of generally the cycle as per this policy, but it just creates a little bit of structure for us and makes us accountable. If we follow off, then we can get back to this structure. The policy also outlines the roles of council, the role of the CAO and the directors, and of course the role of public as well. Just stopping there if there's any questions. Councilor Eberger, what do you think?
It seems like deja vu all over again. Yeah, no, I think it's something we should bring in and get it into a policy. It's kind of what we've been trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Your Worship, through the CAO Becker and staff, I think it's a great document. And, I've went through it and I think it looks great. So I would certainly support a framework like this. So thank you very much for bringing it back.
I wasn't really aware of this policy, I guess. It was never brought to our attention, but it does, to me, almost appear like we've followed it.
Mm-hmm.
And that we first all got on and we did a 4-year plan, and then at the end of the first year, we adjusted it a little bit, and the second year, we adjusted it a little more for the next year, but 2 years. But I mean, I don't know how else you can do it other than, sit down and do that. But if you have a formal way of addressing it, so nothing, you kind of stay consistent in your planning process. But I think it's a great opportunity. And Councillor Rehberger, or you've got the most experience, or maybe Councillor Bates as well, with this policy? You must have had something to do with the input of it.
Oh, I think CAO Becker just whipped it together and brought it to us.
Yeah. That's kind of what I thought too. Is anybody prepared to make a motion that we adopt this policy?
No,
Or we can't?
we can't here.
I'm sorry.
But if we bring it to a real meeting,
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. All right. If you show up, okay.
So yeah, with that, Your Worship, recommendation from administration for council to consider forwarding this policy on to a regular council meeting for review and potential adoption.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All
Sure,
right,
I'll move we bring this forward to regular council.
I wasn't even gonna bother, but, okay, all in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Chamber video camera.
This is me.
Director Weimark, are you?
I'm doing this one, yeah. Thank you, Your Worship. So we had sort of discussed in budget that I was looking at a different camera system for in council here. So I do have, sorry that you didn't get this prior to, but I believe you have copies of them where you sit there. So they do drastically vary between the prices. So quote number one, or option number one, is putting 3 cameras in and voice tracking. So what that means is as soon as you speak, whatever camera is near you will come on, be clear, concise, versus just the stationary one that's there. That's really the biggest difference between, so the option number 2 is just one more additional camera that would go back on this side. So it would pick between those two. You'd still have a much clearer than what we have now. It'll be very much clearer than that. But it will give another option. So I was looking to see what council's preference was as to the degree of streaming that we're doing. I don't believe that COVID is, even as we roll out, that's going to change our live streaming process. That was something we were working towards to before COVID, is that we could do live streaming. So yeah, it's just what option that council prefers as to what information and what visual will go back out to those individuals that are watching.
I think I had a bit of a discussion with the CAO Becker yesterday about this, no, it was this morning. And I mean, there's a lot of communities that are not doing live screening. And one of the reasons being is that when you're doing live screening, you have to retain that history and those videos for however long. I'm not sure how long, probably forever, but so that's what some of the communities have said, well, they're not prepared to make that commitment and did away with it. And it's certainly not something that's mandatory or required right now, but we've always kind of been on the impression of that it was meant to be this set up with the new building and new council chambers, and we've just moved forward with that plan. But I'm always of the feeling that either you do it right or don't do it. And this to me is third class. I mean, we've got to, if we want it to be functional and serve a purpose, we do have to upgrade it or do away with it completely. That would be my 2 options, but that's just my 2 cents. Councillor Hill.
Yes, Your Worship, Director Weimark. At the time, this was the camera system that was put in. It was not for longevity. It was just an interim, correct?
Through the mayor, through to Councillor Hill, you are absolutely correct. This was never going to stay. It was the intent. We put the wiring in so that it was ready to go, so they don't have to come and do all the main wiring. They'll have to do just a little bit for each camera. So it was always the intent to go live streaming. So we should have, hindsight, went with the more upgraded camera, but at the time budget was of a particular conversation at that time, and of course that was not just council chambers, it was the whole building. So we went with what we could until we knew what that was going to look like. So it was always, the intent was to go live streaming and to definitely be clear on that live streaming.
And just to further that question, obviously the 2 examples that are in front of us, pretty well the second quote just has 1 additional camera. That's the only real difference. Compatibility and quality all seems to be the same, or?
It won't do your by us talking. So it's just going to be 1 camera or the other. So you'll see sort of a double, it'll merge together to be a 1 picture type thing, but it won't go, the first option gives you to voice contact. So there'll be a camera here that you'll hear it go as one goes to speak, you'll hear the camera move to that voice, and same with those ones. They will activate on voice command through the mics, so they'll know which camera to point at which angle. The other 2, the first system won't do that. The less costly one will not do that component.
Thank you for the additional clarity.
Your Worship, through to Director Weimark, following up on Councillor Hill's question there. So in option 1, the cheaper one, there's still just one camera. Will the quality of the video be better than what we've got now? Will it be
Right.
high HDR or whatever?
It won't look like your screen.
It won't?
That's the best way for me to explain it. That camera's gonna be replaced, so you're actually getting two, even though it says one, because it's sort of part of the deal. So there'll be two brand-new cameras, just one will be in that spot and one will be in this spot, but it will be a clearer vision.
But it won't have the ability to focus on the one person.
Not on voice, it won't be voice
On the
activated. It'll just
microphone.
be on like this one is.
Yep.
Okay, because I think the audio with what we have now is good, you know, for the public. I think the audio's there, it's just the quality of the video, it looks like we're in a fishbowl.
Correct.
So, you know, for the price difference, you know, I don't know if I could justify the extra dollars for that extra camera that goes to the voice. I don't know if I could support that, but I'd like to hear from my colleagues here. Thank you.
Councillor Reber.
Through Director Weimark, this quotation, the first quote, if I add up the items in the right-hand column, I don't come anywhere close to $33,000.
Yeah.
I come up with less than 25. I don't know, I'm just looking at it thinking, this doesn't add up.
Is that per camera?
Well, I don't know, as per the quantities in the,
No, I know, the same with the first
That's
page.
a great question.
so, well, yeah, so what is the actual quote, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I didn't go and break down by quote, we just talked bottom numbers, so I'm gonna have to go back to them because you're right, it does not add up for numbers at all. I think they've missed a 7, so if you do one camera at 7, 3 would be 21, it's only 15, so, because the cameras will be the same. So, but you're right, I'll go back to get that to add up. Yep, you're right.
You know, it's based on, this is a per camera cost, but there's 2 cameras on option 1, right?
So, Your Worship, through to Director Weimark, I guess back to Mayor Romaine's comment about storage and having to keep the video for,
So that is a 1-year retention period, so
Okay.
through our records management video, unless we're being a policy, which I know we're talking about, then you can determine it to be kept longer, but right now in retention, it is only a 1 year.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
and probably a silly question, but I'm not the techie person. You can go buy some pretty good cameras for fairly cheap. Is it possible to mount a camera up there at the end wall that is high def without it like being hooked into this system for $16,000?
And that wasn't an avenue I went down, that'll be
Okay.
more these guys' world. I went back to this system,
Yeah.
what would go into this system. I think you're probably looking at maybe different wiring. I'm not sure, that's something we certainly can go back and check into
Yeah, I
though.
wouldn't mind it if you could. And like I said, I know nothing about it, but I just want to put it out there because you can, you know, everybody has cameras nowadays, so I'd like that to be looked into.
I
And
can work with our 2 guys there
Okay.
and see if I can get something else that
Okay.
matches that for sure, if that's council's.
And Your Worship, through Director Weimark, do we get complaints about the look of this? I mean, I think the sound is fine most of the time. We've had a couple of issues, but
I have, these guys probably could answer that better
Okay.
than myself. I just know from watching it that it looks like I need to clean my contacts every
Yeah.
time I look
Yeah,
through
it
there.
does.
Type thing,
but it's also $17,000, right, to
Correct.
upgrade? So
yeah.
anyway, I wouldn't mind kind of wondering if there is any negative feedback about the feed that people get. And
Yeah, maybe I'll try and answer that one, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Barkley, we don't receive much, to be honest. I think those that do watch it, I mean, I think on average, I think we have about 7 or 8 per meeting. That's a very rough estimate, so take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, certainly some of the technical issues we've had, notwithstanding, of course, feedback has been quite limited. Granted, we haven't sort of gone and done any kind of surveying or asked. But yeah, I wouldn't be able to give you a lot of insight at the moment.
Thank you.
I think, Councillor Barclay, I think you're probably on the same wavelengths I am, is just to get a clear picture. The individual thing is not a big deal. It's like, this isn't the city of Calgary or something where there's a camera for every councillor, but just the process of a good camera. If it takes a second camera, the cameras are not that much, but just to clarify and get the resolution up. And
Yeah, and Your Worship, my thought is not just getting, my thought is it fine the way it is for $17,000?
Oh.
Do we leave it the way it is? I mean, people can hear us, they can see us. Yes, it's a little foggy, it's not the best resolution, but is it worth a $17,000 upgrade? It's kind of my question, so.
I know I've certainly had comments about the quality, but I mean, that's not a major factor. But I think it is in the way it presents itself, is that it's pretty hard to tell who's talking or who, but it's, it's big. Perhaps there's another figure in these numbers too that you can find, Heather, that might be a little more appealing.
Your Worship?
Yes.
If I may, the other thing where I get some of the, in my thought process as well, is obviously we'd like to encourage our community to chime in, and if they are able to watch, and it is easier for, someone that, like, I have relatively good vision, and I think if someone that is logged on and watching has very poor vision or whatever, might have some complications, I just think that if we want our citizens to be involved and hearing what we have to say and partaking in this, one of your first comments, Your Worship, is if we're going to have something, we might as well have something that does fully function on and we can be proud of and stand behind. And with Councillor Barclay's comments as well, I don't think it needs to be maybe that much, but if there's something in the middle, I would be inclined to see that. But I think we have a good online presence. We want to encourage that and we want to build on that. And if that means that we have to amp up our game when it comes to technology, then that's something that has to just go hand in hand.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Bates?
Yes, Your Worship. My thoughts I've been trying to watch on the screen here the whole time when we've been doing this, and I can tell who's speaking. If it was clear, I think it would be quite adequate and probably get us then to the next level of technology when that comes out. I wonder too if the first version includes 2 cameras, is it just going to alternate, and then, like, are you going to see anybody up closer than what you're seeing here now? Or if we just had that camera back there upgraded, would that get us by?
So you could do that as well, right? We could enhance that one camera so that it's clearer. For sure, we can do that for sure.
And I think if we did that, and then if we get into just watching our procedure so that one person doesn't just start talking without the mayor acknowledging, and some of those things that I think we could get by without going to the top version. Those are my thoughts.
Okay. I guess, do we need any more motion, or just ask you to come back with
No, I'm gonna come back with some other stuff. I'm gonna look up some
I
different.
didn't think you would argue with cheaper.
Pardon me?
I didn't think you would argue with cheaper.
No, for sure. It was just what council's wish was of what they wanted to have
Okay.
streaming out there, that I was trying to get a ballpark of what we
Yeah.
need to look at. So leave it with me. You'll see it come back with some different.
I think there's something that's a little more acceptable for considerably less money, I think, hopefully. Okay, you'll come back to us. Thanks. Move on to the heliport project funding discussion.
So we'll intro and then perhaps over to Megan. So last council meeting on February 22nd, council made a couple motions. One was to approve in principle the current location for the heliport, to advance onto detailed design for the heliport. So there's one motion again, agree in principle that that'd be the chosen location for a heliport if council decide to want to go in. Second motion was to direct administration to advance in development of the engineering design. That'll come back through Steve, seeking funding to proceed with detailed design. That's when you'll just say yes, no, well, let's proceed with this project. Third motion was then to also provide $10,000 from reserve to advance the development of the operational plan. So today is going over to Megan, just looking at that funding model and what that looks like. So I'll just plant that seed. And of course, and also with that funding model, but also Stuart developed a draft media release for your consideration. So funding model and then press release is the two topics for discussion.
Okay, so I guess last week, some of the conversation or the question that was posed to council was with respect to the funding of the project and whether council was of the position that that the town would move forward with this project and would accept, community contributions as that being a bonus, or is this project contingent on some sort of community contribution? So I guess that's the general discussion and direction we'd like to see from council. I have reached out to the Rotary Club, sort of with their history with the heliport, and they'll be having some discussions with respect to what their involvement, what they may or may not wish to be as part of the project. But I guess, yeah, a bit of a question as to council's desire to move forward. Are we, and you will have some other opportunities to weigh in on expenditures, but is this something that we're looking for some sort of commitment from the community, or is the project in any way contingent on that community contribution? In our discussions with our team, the preference is that we do find someone to partner, whether it's the Rotary or someone else, that if there are community contributions, that those go to that organization as opposed to individuals directly giving to the town to go towards the project. Having a partner will also allow us to look at some other grant funding opportunities as well if we have a nonprofit that we're together with, because they can often access different grants than the municipality can. So, just looking for, yeah.
Well, any comments?
Always, yeah. Yeah, Your Worship, through to Director Jenkins, I'm confident that this community will get behind the project, and so I wouldn't want it to be held up contingent upon that happening, because I think it will happen. And I look back at the skate park and, until the town kind of stepped up and said, okay, we're going to do this. And I see the stakeholders getting involved in this being very broad. When we look back at 1998 and that original heliport, it was organizations, it was corporations, it was the community at large, and I see that same thing happening now, maybe potentially, you know, a Red Deer County coming in and helping out a little bit if they can, or whoever, but there's, you know, corporations in this town, I'm guessing would step up, and a lot of community interest in it. So I would like to see us have a heliport ad hoc committee, like a fundraising committee, similar to what Councillor Rehberger was on with the community bus committee.
Councillor Bates.
I wouldn't make it contingent, I don't think. I think the reality is the will is there to do it, and so I wouldn't make it contingent, and, you know, open to whatever groups can be pulled together, and Councillor Barkley's idea sounds fine.
So we did have a very successful fundraiser for the community bus, but as part of that, we did also approach the county and brought them in on it, and they came through with about 25% of the cost of that bus. So I think that's important. But yeah, I wouldn't want to make it, if we're going to do this, let's do it and not make it contingent. But I agree. I think there's the fundraising possibilities are definitely there. I think it could be done.
Councillor Hill.
Yes, I would agree with everything that's been said. I think one of the key points is that if we're willing to make that first step and we have the confidence that this is something that we all feel our community would benefit from, then I think that the confidence would spread quite quickly, and we would be, it would kind of take off on its own, and I fully support it not being contingent on a partnership or not, because I think we got to take that first step.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too agree, non-contingent upon fundraising. I've been hearing in the community nothing but support for the helipad. So I think it's out there, the support. So I think we just bite the bullet and put it up front and get started on it and be flying in the fall.
Your Worship, just on the community bus committee, I guess on the expectation, is this a handoff to like a Rotary, you know, proceed and fundraise, or is it a more of a detailed structure of a committee? Councillor Rehberger, Councillor Barkley.
Well, we with the community bus, we undertook it and took it on as a society. We formed our own nonprofit society, but I think I would prefer to, like if somebody like the Rotary Club was to take it on, I think that would be my preference to, I mean, they've already got all that done, and it's, I mean, there's cost to having a society and everything else. So if you can do it through an existing structure, I think would be better, my opinion.
I think we've got 6 yeses. So I'm not going to repeat what everybody else just said, but it all made good sense to me.
Yeah, Your Worship, through to CEO Becker, you know, you can guide us on this, but I'm wondering if it was more of a town-based ad hoc committee where, you know, I'm just wondering if the resources are a little bit greater with the town, to kind of form that committee and reach out to other members in the community, and you know, Rotary could be a part of it, but there may be other service clubs that want to be a part of it. And I'm not sure if they would have, you know, the resource and the wherewithal to be able to have this huge community-based fundraising.
Councillor Barkley, I know Megan's been in discussion, so I think there's an opportunity there. My view is we'd have our hands in only for a connection. It's really difficult for a town to conduct fundraising. We already looked at collection, other funds for services. So I think Megan maybe speak to that potential.
Yeah, so I guess in my head, we would approach the Rotary and at least give them that opportunity, as they were definitely the spearhead when the heliport was first developed, and if they do have that appetite. I think similar to the Kinsman with the skate park, that the other service clubs still made their contributions. That in that case, the Kinsman just acted as the primary lead, and yeah, allowed us to access those funds and work as a group. So I think we'll definitely go and speak with the Rotary and see where they're at, and depending on what their opinions are, we may have to circle back around, or we'll go from there.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I think for clarification then, are we looking for just us to proceed with the commitment and that to pursue options for funding?
Your worship, the commitment will come through Steve when he brings back information regarding
Okay.
detailed planning. So there's a
All
few
right.
steps in there, but council has put things in motion. Now on the funding side, we wanted to get that in motion too, on what are your expectations? What I'm hearing is seek community involvement. There's a flavor out there you're stating. However, if there isn't, there's still a potential of that project still to proceed.
I'm hoping it doesn't, the skateboard park project turned out to work quite well, but until the town made the commitment that we're gonna do it, then the people said, okay, now let's, because when we said, okay, here's $1 million project, the Kinsmen are gonna do the fundraising for it as much as they can, and it would have taken all of their money for 10 years to come up. And it was overwhelming for one service club, so I don't want to discourage the influence from others, because when it got done, there was more than the Rotary and the Kinsmen and others that contributed, so we need that driving force for the town to go in and say, look, we're gonna build it, now we gotta find out a way to pay for it.
So again, council ultimately has not decided 100% on the project. You don't have that detail. Steve's working on that right now, but through Megan, she'll start setting up that framework on the funding model. And once, if you give green light, then we'll act on that funding model. Steve, do you know offhand roughly timing on some of that work from RFP or tendering quotes, all that kind of stuff?
We are still waiting feedback from the consultants, kind of the one primary consultant we've reached out to. So we don't have a schedule. Yeah, so it is really hard to say how far that would be. Your worship, to Director Kennedy, that still has I think we made the comments that that manual would really help kind of shape what we truly need. So it's that has to be done prior to anything further, or did I misunderstand that? Yeah, it definitely would help. The consultant we are looking at getting does do both. So we would look at doing a request for both projects for them, and then get a timeline, be most efficient to be able to do it that way. But yeah, we are still waiting for that feedback, so. Thank you. And this consultant is the one recommended by our previous consultants, so.
So what do you need from us?
I think we're good, Your Worship, right now. You can receive it as information. I think we have some work to do. It'll come back to you
Okay.
once we have more detail.
All right, because looking at this press release, it's, it clarifies we're in favor of it. We got to work out the details. Yeah. Councilor Bates?
Yes, Your Worship. I think in the spirit of collaboration, if we are going to reach out to the Red Deer County, we should do that fairly early here in a formal way. And because obviously you get better collaboration when people are involved and they don't feel like they've just been asked. So that should be part of that, a formal reach out to them. Thank you.
Okay.
If we're okay with that, Your Worship, just putting it over to you, the media release that communications Stuart developed. I'm not sure if Stuart has any comments to it, or just seeking council's feedback.
Yeah, as per Todd's comments, Your Worship, just there for your review and happy to hear if there's any additional messaging that council would like to see included in this. It is, of course, in the public realm already, so this is just looking to sort of advance the town communications on the matter.
Any comments? No, actually, I think it's just great. Thanks, Stuart. All right, is that,
Yeah, just for council to consider receiving as information, please.
okay,
Your worship, I would move that we accept this for information.
okay. Thank you, Councillor Hill. Any further discussion? No? No? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, 2A South Regional Transit Pilot Project. Karen.
Thank you, Your Worship. So today I'm just bringing you a memo from the partnership group that worked on the 2A South Regional Transit Project over the last probably close to 3 years when we look at from start to finish. So you've had probably opportunity to go through the information to see the usage over the 2 years. The project was slated to end in December, but due to the COVID and not really getting a good grasp of numbers for 2020, as you can see there on page 2, there was a huge drop in ridership even during those initial months of COVID as well. So we had no real data to determine whether the ridership would increase drastically or not. In December, they gave us an extension till the end of March. And after looking at all of the usage over the course of the 2 years, there's some options that the partnership group has come up with to present to our municipalities. So option number 1, based on low ridership numbers, the pilot project should be discontinued as of March 31st, 2021, due to the project not being economically feasible. Option number 2 was the implementation of a regional on-demand service. We did look at a couple of other communities that provide on-demand services as well when we were looking into this option. So a service provider, either through the city or an independent contractor, would provide the service on a regional basis. So some of the cost of that and some of the needs would be 2 smaller passenger buses, such as a 7-passenger with 1 wheelchair accessible bus. So the operational cost would be estimated at $500,000. So each municipality would be required to fund $166,666 per year to offset the cost. And then there would be capital construction as well. Capital costs, so that would include the 2 small buses and bus shelters. Option number 3, again, that would be for a 5-year term. The option would be to continue with municipalities agreeing to a 5-year minimum, providing annual service. Operational cost, again, is that $500,000, $166,666 per year, and that $250,000 capital cost as well for 2 buses and the shelters. So the recommendation is for option number 1, that the service be discontinued as of March 31st, 2021, due to low ridership numbers and because the service is not economically feasible to continue beyond the pilot project phase. We're hopeful that if new funding is available, we think it would be fairly easy for municipalities to continue the conversation around transportation, but right now it is not feasible to continue based on the way it's been.
Karen, prior to this, the County of Red Deer, and I'm not sure if it was participation with Penhold, had a service and then extended it down to Innisfail. Do you think like this, there was a bus that was going out to Springbank
Springbrook.
or Springbrook?
Yeah, there was, the county was operating the service from Springbrook
That was just
into
the county.
Gasoline Alley, yeah.
Do you think they're still going to continue if we, because this is
That's being looked at by Springbrook. They would
Yeah.
have to consider whether that's viable for
Yeah.
their community. Yep.
Okay. Comments? Councillor
Thank you,
Harrison?
Your Worship, through to Karen. Just for clarification, so Red Deer Transit now runs to Gasoline, or would run to Gasoline Alley? They'd continue that service?
There is a service to Gasoline Alley. Yeah, that one has continued. They have made changes in that, like the county's made changes to that route. As far as I understand, they no longer do the east side of Highway 2. They just do the west side of Gasoline Alley.
So maybe it's a transfer service, and maybe following up to Mayor Romaine's comment, maybe it's a transfer service from Innisfail, Springbrook, transfer a Gasoline Alley, it's a scheduling thing?
Yeah,
And then go for there. So I guess the question is, more of a, no, I guess it's a comment. A lot of people have used this, and I've heard a lot of positive comments from the people that are using it. And when you have something and you take it away, it's never good. So I'd really like to have some kind of idea of how we're gonna replace it. Maybe it's the size of the bus. You don't need to run with a 45 passenger bus between Innisfail and Springbrook. And maybe it's something that our transportation committee could look at with a smaller bus and gets back to the transfer at Gasoline Alley. So more of a comment, but I really think it's a service that's needed. You know, I've talked to a number of people and they are using it, and it's, so.
there's definitely a need for the service, and like we do know that there are individuals that have to go on a consistent basis. We didn't get the commuter that we were expecting. Like, we did get some that commute from Red Deer to Innisfail for work and vice versa, right? But not to the degree that we were hoping, right? But I think there's an opportunity for municipalities to look in-house as well to see are there other options. I mean, prior to the bus service, we were running the big bus out there like monthly, then we tried weekly, but that wasn't viable either. So I think it definitely needs to be not the big bus, right? But the transportation committee, it's an opportunity to look at other options maybe. But each municipality can look at that in-house as well. That's an option.
Okay, thank you.
Your Worship, through to Karen, are you continuing discussions with Penhold and Red Deer County about what could be a different kind of service?
Well, we've put forward these recommendations based on this project, but just in general discussions, like, we don't know what the province is going to do when they aggregate the data, right? So I think it's going to be dependent on whether the province is even going to put some funding forward. If the province did, I think there's opportunities for municipalities to continue the conversation, but I think it would depend on what kind of investments required to do that.
So do you foresee that happening before the end of March? Because the service is done, right, at the end of March?
Yeah, the province only extended it to the end of March.
And then the other question I have with the data in the Innisfail, Penhold, Springbrook data, it's kind of interesting to look at the Penhold numbers, that they increased where hours decreased, as did Springbrook's during COVID. So I'm wondering, is that accurate?
That's only boardings from our communities. That's not the boardings, from what I understand, that's not the boardings from Bauer Mall back to our communities.
Okay, but I'm just saying, like Penhold, they had, sorry, I put on my glasses, 554, where we had 596. They're the only ones that increased from 19 to 20, where we've drastically declined, I'm assuming because of COVID and people aren't going in as much. And
I think one of the things we observed with Penhold is they have more of that youth engagement that's happening. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I guess, like Councillor Harrison, I would like us to look at some other options. I know the transportation committee is kind of looking at maybe a second vehicle, and could that be something that we incorporate into this? And because I mean, it's obviously not being used a lot, but you're right, you take it away and that's difficult, right?
Yeah, for those that are using it, for sure.
Yeah.
Your Worship, Karen, through to Karen, could you just tell us a bit about the RTPP working committee, who that is? And because obviously you guys have anguished over this quite a bit, and I guess the other thing that I should let you answer first, but the other point I'd like to make is it was a trial, and if I look at I had no idea they expected or hoped to get 15 boardings per hour. And you can't, unless we're willing to spend, and it would take all the communities to spend a couple percent in Innisfail taxes just to run that.
Yeah, and one of the things to keep in mind, like the recommendations for the different options, that is the service as is, right? But based on the feedback that we got, there would have to be changes to scheduling and things like that to accommodate an increase in ridership, because we did get feedback from, that would like to see a service evenings and weekends and things like that, which right now we were basically doing it for the work week, right? So there would need to be changes
have to-
certainly to a service, which would affect overall cost again.
It would have to be bigger.
Yep.
And was it approximately $700,000 that was spent over the 2 years? or-
I think we're actually slightly under budget. Yeah. We were pretty conservative and just making sure that we were able, because we didn't want to be at the end of the 2 years and then go, oh no, there's a shortfall of some kind that we missed. So we kind of put in those buffers just to make sure. And from what I know, we're under budget a little bit. So, yeah.
So the other problem, obviously, is it's going to run out of support from the province at the end of March. So I did kind of jump in, and I didn't get a chance to. Who is the RTPP working committee? Is that like you and a representative from each of the other?
Yes. So we have a representative from Penhold, from Springbrook, and we have a representative from the city of Red Deer with transit there as well. Yeah. It's been a really, really positive, actually, learning experience, and I think is really good opportunity for future conversations if there is other opportunities for funding down the road. It was really positive.
Well, I guess I see huge money coming from the feds to the big cities right now, but I'm certainly not in favor of committing a lot of funding from the taxpayers of Innisfail with what's being presented here. Those are my thoughts.
Well, it's looking like it's in the neighborhood of between $300,000 and $400,000 a year to maintain that for Innisfail, right? And the numbers of 926 and 19, which was a good year, that's 2 or 3 people per day.
Yeah.
That's pretty-
And we actually downsized the bus from January till March.
Yeah,
We downsized, went to a smaller unit.
so that's a pretty big dollar for,
Yeah.
we're cheaper to send them on a cab than to do that kind of thing, but, But, that's the thing, if we, golly, I'm sorry, but, it'd be nice to see it continue, but I'm inclined to agree with option one, I'm afraid, but that's just my feelings, but.
And I think there's opportunities like for municipalities to look at, like the town of Sylvan Lake, for instance, they have a voucher kind of a system, right?
Yeah.
So there's different models like that could be considered as well through a transportation committee. If there was interest, I guess, in looking at some of those other opportunities, so.
We did have the option of the smaller bus making trips to Red Deer, or the second smaller bus, or how is that gonna work? Making day trips to Red Deer?
That means me. So, the transportation committee met, we were looking more at the minivan. It wasn't a bus, it was
Yeah.
just a minivan to take those one-off, one to two people.
Yeah.
We are in the process of looking at grants right now. We have an option to get 2 grants on this, as well as we talk to the Lions, who's also willing to put money towards that. Now, anybody can certainly book that. It'll be booked through the Legion, just like the handy van is, and there is access to that to use that. But it's not a bus format, it's just a minivan that we're looking at to go that direction.
I think some things you could consider there is whether you do whether if the town wanted or the Legion decided that on a certain day they may set, this is the Red Deer Day or whatever, there might be things that they can put in place there that opens it up for individuals to get in there on certain days or whatever. So it's a little bit more consistent, I guess, so.
Your worship, through to Karen, so from the ridership that we've seen the last 2.5 years, is it more so people, that there's not necessarily people riding it every day going, and it's more so a one-off that I need to go to Red Deer this week to do something, or I have an appointment and this is how I'm getting there?
Yeah, like if you look on page 3 there, in the middle paragraph, it says that most users took the service occasionally, between 1 or 2 times per month, did not capture the commuter market, and seniors tended to use the service, and others that used it required the service for medical appointments or surgery that was not available. So I'll give you an example, like people coming to Innisfail for eye surgery, because we have the clinic here, they couldn't drive, so the bus was a nice option for individuals that required that service, so.
When do we have to make a drop dead decision here, whether we're going ahead with it or not?
Well, I'm presenting to you today, and I believe Red Deer County is tomorrow. And this is just the working groups. This is not the actual council meeting. So I'm presenting today, Red Deer County tomorrow, and I believe Penn holds sometime this week. We all kind of wanted to make sure that our municipalities were aware at the same time, and then you guys would choose from there.
Okay, we've had, CEO Becker?
No, I didn't make a comment, and the only comment I had is that obviously you guys have lived and breathed this for, going on 3 years, and I feel that you would be well within your right to suggest your option 1. That's the recommendation, and if it's not feasible at this time, obviously I think everyone would hope one day we'd find a way to make it feasible, but until those options become available, we just have to face the facts that it is what it is.
Yeah, and transportation is on the plate for a lot of our communities anyway, and will be for a long time. So I think we just keep trying to figure out where there are other options.
Your worship, so the intent today was to provide some feedback to you to get your feedback to move it on to a regular council meeting. So what I'm hearing of council, and I don't want to interject into your conversation, but that there's interest in discontinuing with the partnership in the regional transit service. And it seems like there's some interest too to defer that conversation onto the transportation committee.
I think that's a fair assumption, is it? Okay. Do you need a motion or anything?
What I would ask council to consider, if it fits with you Karen and Megan, move to recommend to regular council for the town of Innisfail to discontinue its partnership in the regional transit service. And pursue other options. I'd suggest another motion to defer the.
Well, let's just stay with that first one. And then, okay. All right, is anybody prepared to make that motion? Councillor Harrison?
I got to get my mic turned on. Thank you, Your Worship. I would certainly make that motion.
Oh. Did you make that motion? Okay. Wasn't clear, okay. All right, all in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Thanks, Karen.
So then, Your Worship, if I could interject again, just to get on the books for an action item to defer, I don't know what the title would be, to this conversation to the Transportation Committee. I'm not sure if you could,
Okay,
there's something in there I'm missing, but.
would someone like to move?
I'll make a motion that we have the Transportation Committee take this transportation project on and come back to us with some information in the future about some different options.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Thanks. All right, roundtable? Councillor Yeltsin?
Yes, Your Worship. No, I thoroughly enjoyed the explanation of a breakdown of the budget that we had the other day with that that explanation definitely helps someone like myself understand things a little bit better, so I valued that, and other than that, no, nothing too much with me. Thank you.
Just make it snow, eh?
Sure.
So last week I attended the budget analysis that, lots of future concerns, obviously. And Friday evening, I had nothing better to do, so I did go on the town hall and listen to Premier Kenny and Rick McIver. It was kind of a combination of COVID and budget. Fair amount of hedging on both subjects. They're definitely aware, though, of the needs and wants of, I would say, of many of the different municipalities in Alberta on both issues. And this week I have MPC, and I think Thursday we have an emergency management Zoom. Is that still? That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Barclay?
Yeah, I enjoyed the Alberta Council budget analysis last week, and Premier Kenny's Town Hall on Friday night, and have MPC tomorrow, and the emergency management training on Thursday.
So last week I attended most of the community services meeting. We had a quorum issue there, but we did go through some of the items. And then the Innisfail Library meeting, they did get confirmation in a letter from the minister that their funding stays intact with the budget, so that was good news. That came through after the meeting. And then I also enjoyed the budget presentation, and I'll be attending the whatever that is on Thursday.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also attended the budget analysis. I didn't attend the Friday night Kenny McIver show. And I've got MPC tomorrow. And other than that, it was a pretty quiet week.
Okay, I had the great pleasure of passing on a souvenir to Mr. John Siroid for 45 years in the fire department. That's probably before some of the birthdays in this room, but anyways, John has been on the fire department since 1976, and he kind of thinks you gave him the job, did you? At Manville? You were councillor, Fee at the time was there too, I believe, eh, Doug? But anyways, yeah, he was very pleased with the fire department toured around town a little bit with about a six vehicle parade for him, and the old truck from the museum, so he was just dirty-faced grin when he got in anyway, so it was great. I did too sit in on that session with Kenny and McIver too last night. I forwarded a question, but it didn't get asked. Anyways, I had an interesting. I had a little chat with our friends down at the barber shop here, and I'm stuck for her first name, Natalie. So I met with Natalie, and I think she's just would like to thinks that the town of Innisfail could be a little more open with new businesses coming to town and such. And I said, well, I know we've got our economic development committee has been very, adamant about, thanking new businesses and stuff. I'm not sure, Stuart, if they got missed or I'm thinking back, it was hard to pick a time when they actually opened up. But anyways, I think it's something that, maybe we can address if we're, a little more awareness of new businesses, or perhaps send them a welcome or something, but I think we were talking about doing something like that in the welcoming committee scenario, but that's all. She expressed her interest in council and that she intends to run for council. And that, there was a bit of a misunderstanding when they came to sit in at council. They thought they could just come in and then found out that they had to have a written application to come, and which then she realized after she made sense. So, and she was quite happy with Heather's remarks that you made to her that night too. She said that we thought we were going to lose our business license, and that wasn't the case. And Heather pointed that out to him that night. So, I think it was good to reach out to her and just have a chat, and that. Hopefully the whole thing is behind us. And I believe today there's some more announcements coming out of your. Has anybody heard anything yet on the Alberta Health Service limitations or changes?
No.
I don't think it's on until 4:30.
It was, it was supposed to be on at 3:30 or 4:30 or something like that. So, Councillor Harrison, you got your light on there.
I do. Thank you, Your Worship. And I'd just like for the record to respond to your comment and Natalie's comment or Ms. Klein's comment about not being welcomed by the town. 3 days after they opened in August, I stopped by, and on behalf of the town and council, I did welcome them into the community. And I said, if there's anything that we may be able to help with, feel free to attend any council session and give her the schedule. So I just want the record to state that they were welcomed as on behalf of council and administration. So thank you, Your Worship.
And I indicated to her it's important. Like we deal with a number of delegations all the time, and it's important that you give some thought ahead. Councillor Hill.
Yes, and I definitely can understand how there can be perceived inconsistencies, and I do feel that if there was something that was, whether it was a checklist for, whether, no matter what business it may be within our community, whether it's anytime a business license is issued, or it should trigger an event that then would coincide, and maybe there is something that I'm not aware of, and if I am, I do apologize, but something like that, just so that way we just do our part, and then we've learned now through your discussions that that's a perception piece, and we don't want anyone else to have that perception. So going forward, that should be maybe a distinguished effort from our behalf.
Okay, I don't think I had anything else. Stephen, have you got anything going on? No? Heather?
I do. So I just wanted to bring to council's attention, these are the first bills that went out with the new rates on them. We did send an insert, however, on the first insert, we didn't word how the rates went. So there was an indication that we said that they were charged the flat rate per metered site, where actually the bylaw states per billing unit. This did cause a few questions. So just so council's aware that we have now sent out a second insert that has the correction in there as per the bylaw. But it did bring some of our higher multi-unit people asking questions as to how they're getting charged that when it was supposedly changed, which it was not changed. So I just thought I'd bring it to your attention because they may call you, because I'm certain some may not like my response, because it is quite a handsome dollar amount attached to some for multi-units. So just so you know that that's on the plate, but we did send out a correction notice in the next set that's going out.
Megan?
Just a reminder, if you haven't completed the Aquatic Center Multiplex survey, that will close tonight as of midnight. So hopefully in the next couple weeks, we'll have results, likely a standalone session with council to go through that information. And then this Wednesday and Thursday evenings, there are the North Area Structure Plan public input sessions. And yeah, that's about it. MPC tomorrow.
Ken, you got anything? No? Stuart?
Nothing else, Your Worship, thank you.
Vanessa? No? Mr. CEO? No? Nothing? All right. Okay, I guess next thing in, go in camera.
Your worship, I'll move that we move in camera.
Thank you. Take a minute, a couple minutes or whatever. Yeah, that's what, that's at 5 o'clock, emergency.
3:30, Jim, but I don't think